Hello everyone, this is another update to my build. Um, we are now a level 90 Bloodmage with our 4th Ascendancy point, which is actually the 2 Leech nodes. And contrary to how I shit-talked it in my first video, after GGG buffed Leech, I think this node is really insane now. It sustains our HP completely during boss fights, and in fact if I take a chunk from the boss for like a skill issue reason, the Leech will top me up in like 1 second or so, even while I'm spamming Hexblast. So not only does it sustain our health cost, it's a really strong form of recovery as well. So this actually means the delimiting factor for our DPS is mana now, and we have pretty severe mana problems still. So even with my current 117 recovery, and this is not with my Arcane Surge up, because I have this Anoint, Aspiring Genius. This is up about 50-60% of the time. So it's not as good as I thought it would be, but it's okay. We cannot sustain mana, as you can see. Like, even with the mana pot up, it barely sustains, but it doesn't rise. It feels horrible to play with. So I need to improve mana somehow. And I have a few ideas on that, and I'll go over it later. Anyways, I think the build itself is fantastic now. I think the core of the build is really efficient. It excels in mapping content, especially like Breach. Although not to the same extent that some of the Deadeye builds I see out there excel at Breach. Like they're just off-screening from 2 screens away. Kind of like a PoE1 build. But yeah, this build really scales into an endgame powerhouse after you get the Leech nodes and fixing your single target damage. I've also had a lot of people ask or comment under my previous videos that since GGG has confirmed that Hexblast only detonates 1 curse, whether or not it's better to drop 2 of the curses down to just 1, and then use that extra 100 spirit reservation to set up a cock. I don't think this is a good idea. Firstly, I'm assuming people are doing this to get more damage, so obviously the curses they're going to drop are Temp Chains and Feeble. And I've said this before, and I've also commented this, but Topside Witch, and especially Bloodmage, like up here, has really, really poor defensive options available. Like, you can't use armor. Like, you could maybe if you path here, if you have a shield, which we can't use. You can't use evasion, because we're dex starved. Like, this build needs strength and int, and to go evasion you need dex. And energy shield is a really powerful defensive layer, but it requires heavy investment on both the tree, which we can do, and on the gear. And this is a problem for us as well, because as a Blood Mage, you are locked into a life prefix on all of your gear pieces pretty much. Because your skills cost life, your life scales your damage, so you just need life everywhere as well. PDR, physical damage reduction, it doesn't exist either on our tree or on our gear. You could maybe argue that a Cloak of Flame is good, but again, I don't think the stats you lose from a rare chest is worth it, especially, as I mentioned, you need life. A lot of other witches I've seen, they use a wand and a shield to alleviate defensive pressures, and then they go for block chance nodes. Unfortunately for us, we can't do that either, since we're running a Scepter. But the good thing is, the Scepter gives us a shit ton of spirit. So we can leverage that spirit for fixing this massive defensive hole in our build. And Temp Chains and Enfeeble is kind of like just a saving grace that fixes this defensive issue. Otherwise, I wouldn't play this build. Like, this build would be shit, because you just die all the time. And it's also a really efficient defensive layer, because scaling Curse Effect and Curse AoE improves both the defenses and offenses of this build. So I don't really understand where people are coming from when they want to drop Temp Chains in Feeble, because I've seen a lot of builds out there, like even without scaling any Curse Effect, just add in a random Temp Chains. And I mean, you can play the build yourself and try and turn these curses off and see how it feels, but for me personally, it feels like shit. And yeah, the other thing is, into higher tier maps, the high tier maps scale monster damage much harder than monster tankiness, and I've seen this corroborated by other people as well, and it's absolutely true. Try and play this build without the double defensive auras in T15 maps, and have your only defensive layer be overflowed life and overflowed ES. You're just gonna die constantly, and if the T15 map rolls even a single damage mod, it's just gonna be unclearable. The breaches will be very rippy. I mean, yeah. For all the softcore Andes out there who want to boost their single target damage with a cock setup, which by the way doesn't even interact mechanically well with Hexblast at all, because we hit once per cast. By all means, you can go ahead, but be warned, the build probably won't feel very good because you'll be dying a lot, and dying is really bad in this game. Trust me, just don't die. Yeah. Now for my gear upgrades personally, I've made a few, I think 3. The most notably being this amulet, which is really insane, and I don't think I'll be able to upgrade from this for a while. So I've also invested the Aspiring Genius Anoint into it as well, because the Anoint is like 70 exalts. You absolutely don't need an amulet this good. The important mods prioritizing are still Spirit and plus level to all spell skills. The other mods are just auxiliary. Get whatever you can afford. A 3 to 4 mod amulet is what I was using previously, and honestly, it would still be good enough. My build I upgraded here. A bit more resists, and very importantly, the high mana roll. So flat mana scales our mana regen, since mana regen scales off our max mana. Our base mana regen scales off our max mana. And so you can see how much my mana regen goes up by equipping this belt. Like, that's a lot. It's like 15% more mana regen. So eventually you do want mana on all of your prefixes, and int as well as a suffix wherever you can, just for more mana regen, because as I mentioned, our mana is really bad, and I think the mana scaling on gem levels, I think GGG really messed this up, especially on high level gems. It's just straight up impossible to sustain. In fact, like, none of my Hexblast supports, they're even scaling the mana cost. You can see I'm even reducing it, and yeah, it's horrible. Yeah, the gloves are also an upgrade, just a bit more resist. In fact, I don't think it's even more, it's just changed, because I changed the belt, so I needed to change the resists, and having no harvest craft in the game is a bit painful. It makes upgrading gear really hard. I think that is it for the gear, and skill gems wise, there are a few improvements. Most notably, this came from someone's comment under one of the previous videos, is to set up Soul Offering as a weapon set 2 skill, and then on my tree, you can see now that I've used all my weapon set skill points. So for the weapon set 1, which is my main damaging skill, the tree looks pretty much the same as the original one. I will note that I've added in these 3 points for stun threshold, because I kept getting stunned a lot in maps. Oh, yeah, which is sort of why I like this belt, because of the implicit stun threshold. I think it's really nice. I don't notice myself getting stunned at all now. At least I don't get chain stunned, maybe once every now and again, which is acceptable. But yeah. The main tree is still the same for weapon set 1, but for weapon set 2, I've just removed like all the damaging nodes from the main tree and split them up into weapon set 1, and weapon set 2 I spec into full skill effect duration. You can see here, 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 and then there is specifically offering duration, and then the rest I added into minion life, just so the offering doesn't die as easily. What this does is it allows for my offering to last 20 seconds now, which is really, really nice quality of life. And because of this, I've also moved Essence Drain as well to the weapon set 2, just so this lasts longer, because this is just for utility, and you only really want to cast it once, and it lasting 12 seconds is also really nice. You cast this once on the boss, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, you might have also noticed that I only have 2 Skeletal Clerics now instead of 3 in my last update, and this is because my Blasphemy is now 6 linked, and originally I did plan on using Ritualistic Curse, I think it's called. Yeah, for increased area, but this is not actually as worth it as Heightened Curse. So as I mentioned in my kind of mini rant, we scale Curse effect for defenses, and this is 25% increased Curse effect. It's like an extra 7% less damage taken on the Enfeeble or something, and it slows the enemy significantly for Temp Chains. And when I was starting to juicing up my maps, I was dying quite a bit still. So I subbed in not magnified effect, Heightened Curse. Yeah, and I die a lot less. But unfortunately, this is a 40% multiplier to Spirit Reservation, which equates to exactly 65 extra Spirit to reserve all the Blasphemy auras now. To run this, I have to drop Blink and a Skeletal Cleric, and this gives me actually 15 Spirit remaining. And so I've added in Herbalism plus Cannibalism. Dropping Blink does feel bad, but right now, to run juiced T15s, I feel like I need the Curse effect. Eventually, I do plan on adding Blink back in, simply because I like using the skill so much. And to do that, you can see my chest doesn't have any Spirit on it right now, and you can roll like 50 or something Spirit on this. And if you get a chest with 45 Spirit, you can run Blink back in by dropping one of these 15 Spirit buffs, which is probably Herbalism. Since our Leech sustains our health now, we don't really need the health flask as much, and Cannibalism feels a lot nicer to play with when you're mapping, because if you blast the pack while they blast you and you're on like 1 health, you instantly get back to full, which is really nice. Yeah, so you need 45 Spirit on the chest, and I've been trying to craft this, and this is one of the failed products, I would say, because while it's good, the resists just aren't good enough for me right now. You can see the resists I have, so I can't wear this. And I will note that the base needs to be an Expert Keth Raiment for the mana regen implicit, because as I mentioned, we have really bad mana issues still, and this 40 to 50 implicit will boost our mana regen by pretty significant amount. So yeah, I've been collecting these bases to craft on, but nothing good right now. I think crafting specific gear pieces is an absolutely horrible experience, especially endgame. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the update. I will probably just be working on gear piece upgrades, especially for mana, after I acquire a satisfactory Expert Keth body armor. So yeah, I will add a showcase at the end of the video. Thanks for watching.